we have all of our people back on site and restoring the situation. I'm not at liberty to disclose the nature of the discussions. They are confidential, and I do not intend to enter into any negotiations through the media, but to give the South African public the assurance that Eskom management, with the support of the board, is working very hard to do what is necessary within the constraints that we face from a financial point of view to resolve the matters at hand and ensure that we can bring an end to this unlawful, illegal strike action, which appears to have been coordinated but not condoned, as I said, by union leadership. If I can ask our Chief Operating Officer, Jan Oorolser, to take us through some of the units and give us an update on where we are. Jan, please.
Thank you, Andre. Morning to it as well as the members of the public. Andre, without repeating a lot that you've said, I will touch on some of the aspects. As you said, overnight, we lost 10 units at some of our power stations. Now at Medupi, one of our flagship power stations in terms of capacity, we lost 3 units overnight. At the Tuka power station, also 3 units. At Kriel, we had 1 unit, Kusile 1 unit, at Kendall another unit, and then lastly at Duva as well. Now, 2 units have returned. When the GCE gave feedback, it was 1, but subsequent to that, we have now returned another unit. So of the 10, only 2 units returned. Due to prolonged repairs before they can be returned. However, 4 units are expected to return during the day. What we trust and what we're driving for is that these units, the 4 units, will return well ahead of the evening peak, because should some of these units of the older power stations return, just before during peak, the benefit we will unfortunately not have. Now, as explained by the Group Chief Exec, we have some constraints, and that is mainly due to a lack of operators, to return these units. Now, 1 additional unit at Matla Power Station, which previously out on service due to a breakdown, is then also expected to return to service today. But once again, this is dependent on operating staff availability. At Arnold and Indrina power stations, we are also unable to return a unit each due to the unavailability of resources. Now, the capacity lost overnight is in excess of 6,000 megawatts, massive. And of this, 1,300, as I said, the 2 units returned to service this morning. Now, the outlook for the day is obviously not positive. Because we're finding ourselves in an extremely difficult situation in having insufficient capacity available to meet the country's demand. Now, as the Chief Exec also alluded to, the utilization of our open cycle gas turbines has increased drastically, and the diesel volumes are depleted at an alarming rate, especially at Ankerlig down in Cape Town. And this is where we have a logistical challenge where we replenish, the diesel tanks by road. So it makes it difficult. In addition to that, what makes it difficult, we do not have sufficient volumes off-site, and a vessel that will delivering product will only be arriving, over the weekend. So for the morning peak, we ran 13 open cycle gas turbines, including stage 4, just to take us through the morning peak. Now, we currently have a deficit of about 1,400 megawatts, and I think this is important. I'm going to repeat it. So currently, we have a deficit of 1,400 megawatts for evening peak, which already include stage 4 load shedding. So this is why it's critical that we make sure that the units, the 4 that I just referred to, and we trust maybe at Matla as well, that those units return well ahead of peak. Otherwise, we will find ourselves in a very, very difficult situation. Because then, as the chief exec say, if we are unable to return those servers successfully to the grid, we will have no option but to implement stage 6 load shedding. And as the chief exec said, that will then commence as from 5 o'clock. Now, this decision, I must state, is not taken lightly. You know, stage 6 load shedding is a step change from lower stages that unfortunately we used to in terms of technical difficulty in carrying this out and managing the power system in an orderly manner. So we have only once before been at stage 6 load shedding. That was on the 9th of December in 2019. So our system operating staff, as well as regional operating staff, will find ourselves in unknown territory. So it is something that we train for, and we believe should we be forced to implement stage 6 load shedding, that we'll be able to do it successfully. Now, I'd like to emphasize, and also what the chief executive said, and that we appeal to our labor partners and the striking employees, colleagues, please, to embrace the higher purpose of putting the people of South Africa first, to respect the law and to desist from illegal and undemocratic conduct. Colleagues, we need to understand what is the negative impact that we have on the economy of the country and on the lives of 60 million people of this country. So please, we request you to consider that extremely carefully. Now, we would then also like to remind the public that load shedding is implemented only as the last resort to protect the national grid. It's to make sure that the integrity of the system is always intact. And therefore, we urge all South Africans to continue using electricity sparingly, especially during these very uncertain times on the power system. And I'd like to end to just thank all the colleagues that is doing more than what is expected. You know, for those colleagues that has been on the power station for the last number of days, and that is giving long hours. So that is sincerely appreciated. And colleagues, we are immensely proud of you. Please continue what you believe is right. I'd like to ask then Rulani Matabula, our Managing Director Generation, acting, just to give some feedback and some background and some update, a little bit more on some of the technical detail. Please, Rulani.
Yeah, thanks, and morning everyone on the call. I think yourself, Jan, and Andre have covered a lot of ground in terms of the state of our affairs on our business currently. We have taken a toll since the strike, unprotected strike, actually started, whereby we required our non-bargaining employees, our managers, to take over most of the activities at sites. However, obviously, based on the magnitude of our business, the managers that we have at site are not enough to really look after the many activities that happens on a daily basis at a power station. So that has set us backwards in terms of the continuous maintenance that we were doing to ensure that we can recover our plants. Since the strike started, up until yesterday, before we lost the other units, we actually were sitting with more than close to 3,000 megawatts that we were unable to bring back to the grid because we didn't have the necessary skilled personnel at sites to be able to do the light up of these units and the commissioning of some of the systems that we needed to be able to put these units on the grid. And for example, we have 2 units currently at Arnott that we were unable to bring due to that, 2 units at Duva, 2 units at Matla, and 1 unit at Hendrina. which we were unable to bring on the grid before yesterday because we didn't have the authorized personnel that are necessary to bring this. The managers are there, they are looking after what we can, doing their best, taking long hours and taking a lot of strain to try and put megawatts on the grid, and we appreciate that from our managers and together with their families as well, who are supporting them under these difficult times. We believe that as generation team, if employees can come back to work, we should be able to restore majority of the capacity within the coming 2 days and be able to improve the likelihood of reducing the stage of load shedding towards even bringing it to the end. However, that we can only achieve if our employees can resume their roles because they remain critical in ensuring that we succeed and in achieving what we want to achieve. So in terms of the units that we lost yesterday, there is a number of them that we are trying to bring on load with the skeleton staff that we have at the sites that are not heavily impacted. The units are returning to service. However, the risk remains that at the sites where we are heavily impacted, we might continue to battle to bring units back or even lose more units based on unavailability of critical plant, and that might result in even higher stages of load shedding. So we're trusting that our trade union and our employees will find it at heart to put the interest of the country at first and assist us in bringing the capacity needed back to the grid. Thanks, Jan.
Thank you, Rulani, Jan, and Ruyter. Colleagues, the last person to speak is the General Manager for Generation, Rulani Matebula. Now I shall go to your questions. Let me first state that please use this recording for all your broadcast needs. Use it as a voice note as well. We will distribute it as soon as we have downloaded it after this briefing. Secondly, we will publish a statement as soon as possible after this media briefing to confirm what we are saying and indeed tell you what, if anything, does need to change from where we are at this point. The first question comes from Angelo Coppola of China Global Network, television network. It is for you, Thulani Ngele. When does Eskom plan to go back to the negotiating table with the trade unions?
Thank you so much, and good morning, colleagues. As our chief executive indicated, there is a meeting today where our leadership is going to discuss with the leadership of the trade unions, and we are hopeful that we will be having an engagement with the trade unions by the end of this week. Remember that last time we had a meeting with the trade unions, we had an extra day that we didn't utilize. So we are planning to utilize that particular day, hopefully before the end of this week. Thank you.
Thank you, Thulani. Thulani Ngele is General Manager for People Relations, colleagues. And the last day he's referring to was when Eskom declared a deadlock at the wage talks on Tuesday. The next question comes from Chris Yelland of EE Publishers, and it is for you, Sekhomoto Skiepes. With electricity demand at 34,426 megawatts last night, and load shedding at 4,760 megawatt last night, we are actually into stage 5. Please, can you confirm?
Thank you very much, Sekonati. We will double check those numbers, but in principle, part of what happens during load shedding is that you have to swing between different blocks. So as you are shedding one block and then needing to bring back another block, you may get a spike during that occasion. But we will study this a bit more in detail so that we can answer this more accurately. Thank you.
Thank you, Sekhumoto. Jan, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I'd like to just build on what Sekhumoto has just given. Chris, last night we did utilize some of our demand response resources. So we're not in stage 5 now, but during the night we did use some of our demand response resources.
Thank you, Jan. Colleagues, Sekhumoto Skepas is the General Manager for Transmission. The next question comes from Tuto Ngobeni. How long do you expect stage 4 and upwards to be implemented? Tuto, this whole briefing since it started at 9:30 has been answering exactly that question. We shall take William Horn's question. He is from Network 24. Have there been any arrests of striking workers? Since these are national key points, has Eskom laid charges of terrorism against the perpetrators? Have law enforcement officers been able to assist at all? Karen Pillay, please can you help us with a response to those questions? Colleagues, I'm not certain Karen is on the call here, but Andre, will you take that, please?
Yeah. We have not yet seen arrests of striking workers. I've been in contact with the National Commissioner of Police, General Masemola. He has been instrumental in securing us support from public order policing units. And these have been deployed at the key sites where we have had major challenges, and they have been very supportive. At this point in time, the focus is more on containing the situation, ensuring that we can open access routes, allow workers who do wish to report to work to have unfettered access to site. And we are very grateful for the support of the South African Police Services in this regard. In due course, we will consider whether or not to lay criminal charges, particularly where there are confirmed incidents of intimidation, public violence, arson, and so forth. These are clearly intolerable, and we cannot condone or accept that. This is way beyond what is par for the course during industrial action. But at this point in time, the focus is on ensuring that we can have law and order as much as possible in order to ensure that we can resume normal operations as quickly as possible. I just want to maybe augment what Tulani Ngele said earlier. The intention is that if we are able to reach agreement in principle, that engagements will take place to firm up the agreement, but we really are seized with the matter to try and resolve the dispute with Labour as quickly as possible. So I don't want the impression to be created that we are only going to be negotiating by Friday. We are going to be negotiating later today. So these discussions will be continuing. Thank you, Sekonati.
Thank you, Andre. Colleagues, let me correct the titles to Sekhumoto. Sekhumoto Skepas is the Group Executive for Transmission, and Rulani Matebula is the Group Executive for Generation. Thank you. I said they are General Manager earlier. The next question comes from Kopano Gumbi of Newsroom Africa. How many power stations are currently completely down? Do we have any such power stations? Please, Rulani.
Sekonati, no. All sites are running. The only challenge, obviously, is that some sites have been brought to running only one unit. So because we are having a challenge, obviously, to bring other machines back on load, but all sites are still running. Thanks.
Thank you, Rulani. Anton Mayer from Pretoria FM wants to know, are there any damage to any of the power station infrastructure due to the strike? And any reports of sabotage at the 10 units that are offline? Andre, do you have a response to that, please? Proceed, Jan, please.
Yeah.
Thank you, Anton. Do we have any damage? I believe that we do have damage. The feedback that we're receiving from the power station general managers, there are some of the equipment, some of the, like the coal conveyor system that is not working. We had feedback this morning from the general manager power station at the Tuka that all of a sudden, things happened at the power station. So I believe we have damage. We haven't had the opportunity yet to fully quantify what it is, because those colleagues of ours that's on the power station, they are a few and they have to do virtually everything. So what we're trying to do is to keep the system running, in order to make sure that we do generate electrons, that it's available to the country. As soon as we recover, we will then have the opportunity to assess, what sort of damage do we have. We will then quantify it. And the intention is most definitely that we will quantify it in terms of rand value as well as other impact, and that we will take the necessary steps afterwards. Now, what I'd also like to mention, yesterday during the day, I was actually, giving the feedback to the group chief executive, where I said, the system slowly but surely is recovering. And then you can ask yourself the question, so then what happened overnight? So we still have some acts that we do not understand, some acts that it just doesn't make sense. However, as I said, and I want to repeat myself, due to the fact that we do not have the necessary access to site currently, and that those of the colleagues, and we really salute them, are doing whatever they can to make sure that the units remain online. So afterwards, we will assess what the situation is and then take appropriate and necessary actions. Thank you.
Jan, please take the next question from Teresa Smith. When is Quebec Unit 2 back online?
Thank you, Sigunati. Teresa, I'm actually down at Kuburg. I suppose you can see the picture behind me. We had extensive discussions on Sunday afternoon as well as yesterday. And the indications are, what's planned now is still the middle of July, which will be the 15th of July. But then as normal, the unit number 2 will then take up to 10 days, to ramp up slowly to maximum capacity of 920. So by the middle of the month, the 15th, and then by the 25th to be at full capacity. Thank you.
Thank you, Jan. Narisa Subramani from The Citizen asks a question that has been answered. Is Stage 6 confirmed to start at 5 p.m. tonight? The next question is for Thulani Ngele. Has Eskom received a date for for conciliation from the CCMA yet?
Sigunati, I'll take the question in terms of Stage 6. If it's confirmed, it is not confirmed as we speak. However, we will assist as the day goes on. As I said earlier, we expect the 4 units to return today with another one at Matla. Now, it depends again what stage of the day it will return. And we will assess the situation around 1 o'clock, latest at 2 o'clock, and then we'll communicate to the public of South Africa. However, I need to stress the risk of moving to Stage 6 load shedding is high. That's where we find ourselves. We will try whatever we can to avoid it, but the risk is significant. Thank you.
Colleagues?
Please proceed, Tulani. Sorry, I lost the connection there.
Okay, thank you, Sikonati. The date for the CCMA has not been confirmed yet. We are still waiting for the CCMA to give us a date. But remember, we are having discussions with the leadership of trade unions. So hopefully we will engage and settle this matter before we get to the CCMA. Thank you.
Thank you, Tulani. I apologize, colleagues. I briefly lost connection there. At this point, Ruyter might need to be leaving for the meeting he mentioned. So please do log off, and the rest of the team will continue. William Horn, again of Network Furentwenda, asks, has Eskom officially started with any disciplinary steps against the striking workers? Are you able to take that, Tulani, please? Or who's Jan?
Yes, Sikonati, I can take that. At this point in time, we are busy collating information. And as you are aware, our interest is to keep the plants going. So we will make sure that we will collate information. And once we are done with collating information, we will take disciplinary action when the time is appropriate. But our efforts and resources now are directed at making sure that we are keeping the plants going. Thank you.
Thank you, Tulani. Chris Yeland is referring to his earlier question about stage 5, and he has tweeted the production statistics I tweeted yesterday that show load shedding at 4,760 megawatts. Skhumutso has promised to get back to us with that. The next question comes from Annie. I don't have Annie's full name. Why can't Kelvin supply the necessary feed to City Power? Annie, this is an Eskom media briefing, and Kelvin is the City Power power station. Please do refer to the City of Johannesburg with that question. Sia asks, what stage are we really on? It was not clear when the question was put. Currently, circulating stage 6 is starting at 6 p.m. Sia, Eskom is currently load shedding at stage 4. This whole media briefing says there is a great risk that this evening we might increase load shedding to stage 6 should these risks not be abated. We lost 10 units during the night, and it is not yet confirmed. We will confirm that in a statement after this media briefing towards the afternoon, what stage we will be in the evening. Thank you. Olani Baloyi from VOW FM. Should the negotiations fail with the striking workers, what will be the contingency plan? Andre, you are still online. Please, can you take that?
Thank you, Sikonati. Thanks, Godani. The first point to make is that this is unprotected industrial action. It is unlawful. And as the supply of electricity is an essential service, workers are legally prohibited from withholding labor in order to achieve their purposes for a wage negotiation. So I think that's an important point to make. We clearly need to resolve the matter. We currently have salaried workers, as our Chief Operating Officer said, working very long hours at great personal sacrifice and also sacrifice to themselves and their families. And we have a situation that is not sustainable. So we need to resolve this. Again, to those workers who are currently striking and intimidating, we would urge to respect the rule of law. We would request that they refrain from engaging in unlawful action and that they return to work. It is highly regrettable that the interests of the entire country are at risk for the purpose of extracting additional benefits from the employer, which is Eskom in this case. And we therefore really wish to join the leadership of the trade unions who have come out in support of the employer to request that workers do return to work, and even more importantly, that they refrain from acts of violence and intimidation and allow those colleagues that do wish to work unfettered access to our sites so that we can restore the supply of electricity as soon as we can and avoid any further negative impact on the economy as a result of load shedding. So that is really the extent to which we have a contingency plan. It's very difficult for us to continue along the lines that we are currently operating, particularly given the demands made of our salaried workers. We are having to defer maintenance, and the longer that this unlawful action continues, the worse the backlog in maintenance becomes, and the greater the risk of a more protracted load shedding. So this is a question that I think should be addressed to the workers who are prepared to take this illegal action to further their own interests. Thank you, Sikanati. I can also deal with Kyle's question, which is, can Eskom afford increases for the bargaining unit members at anything higher than the 4% to 5.3% range offered? Kyle, as you are aware, the electricity tariff is set by NERSA looking at the prudent and efficient costs incurred by Eskom. Now, for purposes of calculating the tariffs for all of Eskom's staff complement, and that includes bargaining unit as well as salaried employees, NERSA has allowed a 4.4% salary increase, which was CPI at the time that the multi-year price determination was set, plus a 1.1% additional allowance. So a total of 5.5% across the entire staff complement. However, it's important to bear in mind that NERSA allowed this not for the 40,000 employees that Eskom currently has, but deducted a number of 3,669 employees from that number. So the actual total amount available is less. And of course, if we extend the same increase to our salaried employees, then the burden becomes even greater. So this is a constrained financial situation. If we are to extend an increase beyond what we've offered, we will have to find savings somewhere else. Given where we are with current high oil prices, the cost of diesel and the cost of fuel oil is very high, and this puts further pressure on our income statement, and therefore we will have to really dig deep to see what other savings we can realize in order to maintain as a going concern. Thank you, Sikanati.
Thank you, Andre. Jan, the next three questions are for you. For an ordinary South African, what does stage 6 mean? How long will the power be off? What's the frequency of power cuts? This is Anastasi Mukhobu from Jacaranda FM News. Thank you.
Thank you, Sikanati. I see Anastasia has also asked a question, what does stage 6 mean? Now, for the normal South African citizen now, that means if we are implementing stage 6 load shedding over a period of 24 hours, that means you can expect at least 6 hours of load shedding during the day. Now, it may be split by whoever is your supply authority in batches of 2 hours, 2 hours, 2 hours, or 3 hours, 3 hours. I don't know, but typically you can expect not to have electricity available for about a period of 6 hours over 24 hours. Now, is there a possibility of stage 8? Should this unlawful action continue? Should we not be able to convey the urgency and the importance of making sure that there is capacity available for the economy and for the lives of 60 million people? And if people are selfish, putting themselves first, I believe the risk will increase. Now, we're not yet at stage 6, although the risk is very high. But should the actions, the unlawful actions continue, the risk will increase. You know, the people that is assisting us, our colleagues that is really dedicated, committed, and showing what it means, you know, to go, when the country calls you, you know, to give what is required. You know, a body can only take so much. And you only have 2 hands and 2 pair of feet, you know, so 2 legs, I mean. So where you need to get to, you know, you're limited to that. So I believe we may be approaching a higher stage of load shedding should this unlawful action continue, you know, for an indefinite period. We will again try our utmost to prevent it. But there's only so much that one can do, because we need to understand that people, you know, the human capital, human resources is the most important asset and to an organization and to a power station. And those assets are managing the power station. So a car is not running by itself. It needs a driver to actually drive. So I sincerely believe it will not be necessary to consider even to go to beyond where we are currently at stage 4. But that the risk is always there. The current daily load shedding is expected. As I said yesterday, the indications were that we are moving positively forward, and that we would definitely have considered reducing, you know, the stage of load shedding. However, what happened over the last, say, 12 hours has put us back, really back. So, taking into consideration 4 units returning today, another 4, maybe 6 units over the next couple of days, I believe that, and this is just my assessment, I haven't sat with, you know, my colleagues from System Ops as well as Generation and really had a good look on what's going to happen. But my assessment is I trust that we can stay at stage 4, but in order to recover, what Ruyter has spoken about earlier, the recovery is going to take time. Because let's assume that the industrial action is coming to an end. That means people need to get back. We need to assess what has happened. We need them to deal with all the backlog, you know, getting ash away, filling the bunkers full of coal, whatever the case may be. So I believe that we're in stage 4 for some time. I cannot quantify how many days, but I believe that we are finding ourselves in a position that to get out where we are now is unfortunately going to take some time. However, we will communicate this going forward on a continuous basis, that the public is aware on exactly where we find ourselves. Thank you, Sigonati.
Jan, I thank you. This is the last batch of questions, and they are for you, Ruyter. Lucas Melane wants to know, what does Eskom need from government to stop load shedding? And has Eskom asked what was government's response? Please answer the last one as well, Andre. It comes from an unnamed person. Is the Eskom CEO planning to urgently engage the president on this matter, considering the huge implications for the country and the ruling party's existing relationship with trade unions? Andre?
All right, thanks, Sikonati. Thanks, Lunga. We have consistently been communicating for the past 2.5 years that South Africa urgently needs at least 4,000 to 6,000 megawatts of new generation capacity to stop load shedding. In addition to that, we need a continued program of procurement to allow us to bring more and more capacity on the grid as soon as possible. The steps that have been taken hitherto in terms of the so-called emergency power program, as well as bid window 5, are welcome, but we still have to see those megawatts being added onto the grid. We are therefore still advocating that we should consider all of the obstacles to adding new generation capacity and remove as many obstacles as possible so that we can add much needed capacity to give us the relief that the country requires. I may just also point out, and this is something which is not generally appreciated, that there is Eskom does not have the right to build new power stations or to procure new electricity. That gets done through the IPP office of the DMRE. And this is something which Eskom cannot control. So this is not something that we are in charge of, that process, and therefore the ball is with the IPP office, and I know that they are trying to expedite a new capacity to come onto the grid sooner rather than later. Eskom itself, of course, has made available 18 parcels of land in Mpumalanga for long-term leases. We have identified a number of IPPs who are prepared to come and build renewable energy capacity on those parcels of land totaling 1,800 megawatts. We anticipate that we will be able to sign those lease agreements by August, and once those are signed, then the IPPs can start construction once they've obtained the necessary environmental approvals, and once they have registered their projects with NERSA in terms of the embedded generation dispensation for projects below 100 megawatts. And that's the opportunity that those companies are looking for. We are going to continue to make more grid capacity available and bring more parcels of land to market in order to accelerate the addition of new generation capacity and enable that. We don't want to be an obstacle, but again, we as Eskom are not in a position where we can build new capacity on our own in terms of the way that the electricity industry is regulated. To answer the final question, no, I don't intend to engage with the president. That is not my call to make. The Minister of Public Enterprises, representing the shareholder department, is the political overseer of Eskom, and he will engage with his boss, the president, as he sees fit. This is certainly not something that I'm in a position to do or that I intend to do. Of course, should the president ask anything, any information or any updates, then we will be more than happy to oblige. But I don't intend to reach out to the president personally. That is not my place to do so. Thank you, Siganati.
Thank you, Andre. That colleagues, the chat has been closed, but there's just one last question that Xoli Mngambi of Newsroom Africa snuck into my WhatsApp, and it is for you, Andre de Ruyter. After answering that question, if you do have any closing remarks, we will take those and bid the people farewell. I put it to you that a lack of outreach from South Africans is what has made you, Eskom leadership, comfortable to subject us to prolonged stages of power cuts. What responsibility do you take for failing to prevent the ongoing strike? Andre?
Yeah, I think the message is that a leader faces the music even if he doesn't like the tune, and I think that's the situation that we're in at the moment. I must stress that we cannot prevent illegal action. The strike in and of itself is unlawful. It is prohibited by law in terms of electricity supply being classified as an essential service. It is furthermore prohibited by the interdict that Eskom obtained to prevent this illegal action from taking place. Where workers deem it fit to ignore and flout the law, this is very difficult to lay at the door of management. The easy solution, of course, is to say, yes, let's give a 15% increase to all workers, and let's give another 15% increase next year and the year thereafter. But then the same audience, the same media on the call right now will castigate Eskom management for subjecting it to electricity price increases that are way above the rate of inflation. So we have a fine and delicate balance to maintain here. We want to be a responsible employer. We want to pay our employees fair wages, but where unilaterally and unlawfully workers engage in illegal actions, I think it is unfair and inappropriate to lay that at the door of management. That question should be asked to workers, and I would urge the media to get into their cars and go and ask those workers about acts of intimidation, acts of arson, acts of public violence, and ask them if they think that that is appropriate to subject the country and 60 million people to continued load shedding, and also to exacerbate that risk of load shedding by their unlawful actions. Colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, as you've heard, we find ourselves in a very difficult space at this point in time. I can give the South African public the assurance that, first of all, our teams at the power stations who have reported for work are working very long hours under very difficult conditions to try their utmost to keep whatever capacity we can online. And I want to recognize and thank those colleagues who continue to be loyal not only to Eskom but also to the country by fulfilling their duty and ensuring that we can avoid even further load shedding by the great work that they are doing at the moment. The South African public also has a role to play, and we would again reiterate that we request the public to be cautious with how they use electricity. I know that it sounds like switching off a geyser or a pool pump during peak hours will not make a difference. I can assure you that if all of our millions of customers do so at the right time, it makes a very significant difference. So we all have a role to play in managing demand for electricity, particularly during the hours between 5 in the afternoon and 10 o'clock at night when demand is at its highest. This is an inconvenience. This is a place where we do not wish to be. I would much rather run a utility that is completely invisible and where people in the country can switch on their lights without thinking twice about it. But we are currently reaping the fruits of a number of years of decisions that were made or were not made, design defects that were built into plants, power not procured at the appropriate time, also due to decisions taken by previous Eskom management, and particularly where we are right now is with this unlawful action taken by workers who appear to have embarked on this strike action on a wildcat basis. Highly regrettable. We are working hard to resolve that, and while we do that, again, the support and understanding of everybody in the country is humbly requested in order to ensure that we can navigate our way out of this crisis. In the short to medium term, the solution to this ongoing crisis, where we've had load shedding in South Africa now since 2008, is that we should, as quickly as possible, add as much as possible new capacity. And Eskom again expresses its commitment to be an enabler in this process. We will not be a stumbling block, but we are not the only role player in this regard. And we urge everyone involved in enabling that to make that possible, so that we can put load shedding behind us. Thank you very much for your attendance, and I wish you a safe remainder of the day. Thank you.